We've heard things.
A lot of pictures of apparitions.
That is so nuts.
A human, like a figure.
Just sit and be patient, and very often that ball comes back to your group.
The letter arrived in a yellowed envelope, edges curling like the skin of something long dead. No return address. Only her name in ink so dark it seemed burned into the paper. Miss Clara Vey, we require your presence at Hollowhurst Sanatorium. There is a matter only you can resolve. Midnight. East Wing. Do not be late. The ink bled slightly as though it had been written in blood-thin rain. No signature. Clara stood in her cramped flat, the wind rattling the thin window glass. Outside, the street lamps smeared their orange light across wet pavement. She turned the envelope over in her hands again. She hadn't heard that name, Hollowhurst, in nearly 20 years. Not since her mother had died there. Not since they'd buried her on a winter morning when even the frost looked bruised. Her first thought was that it was a cruel prank. But the paper, it smelled faintly of antiseptic and smoke, a smell she remembered from that night, the night they took her mother away screaming. She should have torn it up. She should have tossed it in the fire and gone back to her tea. Instead, she found herself standing at the bus depot at 10:45 p.m., clutching her coat tighter against the cold. The road to Hollowhurst was black and slick, winding through skeletal trees that whispered in the wind. The driver, a gaunt man with pale eyes, barely looked at her when she asked if this was the stop. "This is it," he said, voice gravelly, not quite looking at the looming silhouette up the hill. "Won't wait for you." And then she was alone, boots crunching on the frost-stiff grass. The sanatorium loomed above, its windows dark, some boarded over, some gaping like open mouths. The moon caught on the jagged edges of broken glass. The front doors hung slightly ajar. Inside, something creaked, too slow and deliberate to be the wind. Clara's breath steamed in the air as she stepped inside. The smell hit her first, old wood, mildew, and that faint antiseptic ghost she remembered. Her footsteps echoed in the vast lobby. The walls were peeled raw, revealing long veins of plaster. An overturned wheelchair lay against the wall, one wheel still rocking slightly as if she had startled it awake. Somewhere above, a door slammed. She followed the hall toward the east wing, her torch cutting a narrow tunnel of light. Doors lined the corridor, most hanging off hinges. On the floor, a child's shoe, brown leather, scuffed, lay in a puddle of water from a ceiling leak. Clara paused at the end of the hall. The east wing doors were shut. In faded red letters, a sign read, "Restricted ward, authorized personnel only." The paint had bubbled as if from heat. She reached for the handle. It opened easily. The east wing felt warmer. Not comfortable, but as though the air had been recently disturbed. The walls were lined with patient rooms. Most were empty, but a few still had beds inside, sheets yellowed and stiff. As she passed one, she thought she saw movement, a figure lying beneath the covers, still and small. She stepped inside. The bed was empty, but the sheets were warm. Further down she heard whispering, faint, almost insect-like. She followed it until she came to a wide observation room. Here the windows were intact, though so clouded they turned the moonlight into a pale smear. In the center of the room was a table. Upon it lay a single folder, its manila edges curling. Her name was typed on the label. Vey Clara, patient record. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were photographs. Her as a child, pale and wide-eyed, sitting on a hospital bed. Dates scrawled underneath in black ink. But she had no memory of being a patient here. None. The whispering grew louder, surrounding her. The air thickened as though the walls were exhaling. Then, without warning, the lights overhead flickered on. She wasn't alone. A man stood in the far corner. Tall, thin. His head was tilted unnaturally to one side, as if something inside his neck had broken. His face was blurred, not just shadowed but as if smeared like a painting dragged through wet paint. He spoke, but his voice seemed to come from behind her ear. "You were supposed to stay." Clara's chest tightened. "Who are you? You left her here. You left all of us here." She backed toward the door, the file still in her hand. His head twitched, and the motion made the air ripple. "It's midnight, Clara. Time for your treatment." The lights went out. Her torch beam sputtered but held. The man was gone. The folder in her hands was no longer hers, it was her mother's. The final page was a death report. Cause of death: cardiac arrest following uncontrolled screaming episode. A handwritten note beneath claimed she saw her daughter standing at the foot of her bed. Time of vision: 12:04 a.m. The same time it was now. Somewhere down the corridor, something began to walk toward her, slow, wet footsteps that stuck to the floor with each lift. The air smelled of rot. Clara turned and ran. The footsteps followed, matching her pace. She glanced over her shoulder, nothing there, only shadows. But when she faced forward again, she stopped dead. Her mother stood in the hallway. Skin pale, lips blue, eyes wide with a grief so deep it seemed to pull the air from the corridor. Her voice was a whisper, but it filled the hall. "You didn't come for me, Clara. Now I'm coming for you." And then the lights above shattered all at once, raining glass in the dark. The darkness was almost physical now, pressing against Clara's skin like damp cloth. Her breath came ragged, each inhale tasting of rust and mold. She crouched low, hands skimming the cold floor for orientation. Shards of glass bit into her palms. Somewhere ahead, a faint glow pulsed, pale and sickly, like moonlight through dirty water. She moved toward it. The glow came from a half-open doorway. Beyond it lay a ward lined with beds, metal frames eaten through with rust, mattresses collapsed into themselves like graves. The light bled from fixtures overhead, dim and intermittent, flickering in time with a low, electrical hum. And then she realized, the beds weren't empty. Figures lay beneath the rotted blankets. The nearest one shifted. A slow, trembling movement, like something trying to wake after years of stillness. The blanket slid back and a face emerged, or what was left of one. Skin waxen and drawn tight across bone, eyes clouded but unblinking. The mouth opened and a rattling exhale leaked out. Then another. And another. Soon all the beds were stirring, each patient turning their heads toward her. Clara stumbled backward, hitting a rolling tray that clattered to the floor. The sound was deafening in the stagnant air. One patient, a woman with stringy black hair matted to her skull, began to speak in a dry, whispering chant. "Stay with us, stay with us." The others took up the chorus, the voices overlapping like wind through dead leaves. A sound rose from deeper in the ward, footsteps, deliberate and slow. The patients' heads turned toward it, their mouths stretching into something that wasn't quite a smile. Clara backed toward the door, heart hammering, when something cold closed around her wrist. She looked down, a skeletal hand protruded from one bed, gripping her hard enough to grind bone. The woman attached to it stared at her with milky eyes. "You left her," she rasped. "Now you're here to take her place." Clara yanked free and bolted into the hallway. The corridor was wrong now. The paint was fresh, the lights brighter. She stopped, chest heaving. The peeling walls she'd seen earlier were gone, replaced by clean white tile. Somewhere nearby, typewriter keys clacked rhythmically. She followed the sound until she reached a glass observation office. Inside sat a nurse, back straight, typing steadily. Her white uniform was immaculate, hair pinned into a severe bun. On the desk was a nameplate, Sister Whitcomb. Clara knocked on the glass. The nurse froze. Slowly, her head turned, too far, almost 180 degrees, until her face met Clara's. Her eyes were pure black. "You're not supposed to be awake yet," she said, her voice muffled by the glass. And then she was gone. Just gone, as if she'd blinked out of existence. The glass wall dissolved into smoke, spilling into the hall. The typewriter sound continued, but now it came from everywhere. Clack, 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 perfectly even. The air grew heavy. Clara's lungs burned as if she were breathing through cloth. The corridor twisted subtly, corners bending where they hadn't before. Doors appeared, some ajar, revealing fleeting glimpses inside. A shadow hunched in a corner, a chair rocking on its own, a figure kneeling in prayer with blood dripping down their clasped hands. And then the morgue. She knew it instantly. The cold, the metallic tang, the rows of body drawers. One drawer stood half open. Her torch beam fell on the tag tied to the exposed foot. Okay.
This is where the balls are, so here's the two small ones. And then here's the big one right there. Okay, just so you guys can see, I'm gonna put
Clara DOA. Her breath caught. The skin on the foot was pale and soft like wet paper. She reached out and the toes twitched. The drawer slid open violently, the body inside bolting upright. It was her. Her own face, eyes sunken, lips split and bleeding. The corpse. Clara smiled weakly. They brought you back, but you shouldn't have come. You can't leave this time. It lunged. She staggered back into a gurney, sending it rattling across the tiles. The thing that wore her face tumbled to the floor, but instead of getting up, it began to crawl toward her, bones popping audibly under its skin. The stench of rot filled the room. Clara grabbed a tray of surgical tools and hurled it. The instruments clattered across the tiles, momentarily halting the thing's advance. She bolted from the morgue, her pulse pounding in her ears. The hallway beyond was pitch black again. The typewriter sound faded, replaced by something worse, the dragging of something heavy along the floor. It was getting closer. She turned sharply into another corridor and found herself in the records room. Filing cabinets towered around her like tombstones. She began yanking drawers open, papers spilling out, admission forms, patient notes, death certificates. One folder stopped her cold. It wasn't hers. It wasn't her mother's. It was labeled, Ward Inventory, East Wing Occupants. She flipped it open. There were photographs, some recent, some decades old. All were of the same room, a long ward with rows of beds, each bed holding a patient. The faces changed over time, but the last photograph made her stomach twist. Every patient was looking directly at the camera. Their faces were pale, sunken. And standing at the far end of the ward was Clara herself, wearing the same coat she had on now. The dragging sound was right outside the door. The knob began to turn, slow, deliberate. Clara backed away, clutching the folder to her chest. She scanned the room for another exit and saw a service hatch near the floor, its grate hanging loose. She dove for it just as the door swung open. She didn't see the thing that entered, only its shadow against the far wall, impossibly tall and narrow.
What is... Something's on over here. I literally, just saw this in the middle of nowhere. I thought that was fucking horrifying. But oh my god, look at that. That's the exit sign. I'm in complete pitch darkness. Fuck, dude, this is so scary. Oh my god. I keep thinking I see something right there. Alright.
Its limbs too long, its head brushing the ceiling. The air in the room dropped several degrees, her breath pluming white in the darkness. She crawled through the hatch into a narrow maintenance tunnel, the metal floor freezing against her palms. Behind her, something began scraping along the walls of the hatch, as though testing whether it could follow. The tunnel was claustrophobic, lined with rusting pipes that hissed faintly. Water dripped steadily from somewhere above, each drop echoing like a clock tick. She crawled forward until the tunnel opened into another part of the building, a boiler room. The heat here was oppressive, steam curling through the air. A massive furnace sat against the wall, its iron doors glowing faintly red. The hum of machinery was deep, almost like a heartbeat. As she stepped closer, she saw something move inside the furnace, shapes shifting behind the grate. Faces. Dozens of them, mouths opening in silent screams. She stumbled back, hitting a workbench. On it sat a ledger, pages open. The handwriting was precise, neat. Admissions processed, 12. Discharges, 0. Reclaimed, 1. Beneath that, today's date. And her name. From the furnace came a voice, her mother's voice. Weak, trembling. Help me, Clara. I'm still here. You can still take my place. The glow intensified, the heat becoming unbearable. The furnace doors creaked open an inch, then another. Hands reached out, dozens of them, pale and grasping, nails blackened. She turned to run, but the hatch she'd entered through was gone. In its place was a wall, smooth and solid. Behind her, the hands clawed closer. The heat pressed against Clara's skin until her coat felt soaked with sweat. Her mother's voice still called from the furnace, weak and shuddering, but with a strange insistence. Clara, it's time, you promised. She backed against the wall, eyes darting around the boiler room. There was no hatch now, no door, only the monstrous furnace and the shadows it cast, writhing like living things across the ceiling.
What the fuck? I just heard a whistle coming this way. And they're all the way over there. Holy shit. Oh. Who is that? Dude, I swear to God. Something. What the? Okay. No way.
The red glow pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat, as though the thing inside was already feeding on her. She clenched her fists. I never promised you anything, she said, though her voice trembled. Pause. Then, you don't remember. The shadows deepened. The floor under her feet softened slightly, sinking with a sickening give, as if she were standing on something alive. She looked down, the concrete was gone. Beneath her boots, pale shapes shifted just under the surface. Faces, mouths, hands pressing upward but never breaking through. The voice came again, but now it wasn't just her mother's. It was layered, dozens of tones speaking together, weaving in and out of one another. They called it treatment, the chorus murmured. You called it home. The walls flickered, one moment brick and metal, the next a different room entirely, bright white, the sting of disinfectant in the air. A younger Clara sat on a bed, knees drawn up, watching a nurse prepare a needle. Her mother stood in the doorway, pale and tired. You stayed here for months, the voices whispered. When she tried to take you away, you told them to keep her. You told them she was sick. You told them to help you instead. The image twisted. Now she saw her mother strapped to a gurney, mouth covered with a breathing mask, eyes wild with terror. And there, in the corner, was her younger self, watching silently, holding a paper cup of pills. Clara's stomach lurched. No, that's not. I was a child. You chose, the voices hissed. You chose to leave her. The furnace roared, the glow flooding the room until every shadow sharpened like a blade. The heat scalded her skin. From the half-open grate, her mother's hands emerged, but not warm, loving hands. They were burned black, nails split, skin cracked to the bone.
This. Like this. That's gonna be there. I'm gonna put a couple of pieces of equipment too. Okay, I'm gonna put a cat ball. If anything touches it, it'll go off. Then I'm also gonna put this REM pod, which also detects physical touch. Okay, so that will be both of those there. And now I'm gonna go back up.
They gave me your place, the mother thing said, her voice cracking. And now, I give it back. A sudden metallic clang rang out. One of the furnace doors swung wide, and the stench of charred flesh spilled into the air. Inside was no simple fire, it was a churning pit of red, alive with shapes that reached, screamed, and twisted against each other. The hands shot forward, impossibly long, gripping Clara's wrists. The skin burned where they touched. She screamed and tried to wrench free, but the pull was enormous, like the weight of the building itself was dragging her in. Then from the far side of the room came another voice, deep, low, resonating in her bones. You may refuse, it said. But if you do, she stays. Forever. Clara turned her head. In the corner stood the tall, narrow shadow she had glimpsed before, the thing with limbs too long, its head bent against the ceiling. Its face was a void, its body little more than a stitched outline against the glow. It stepped closer, and with each step the floor bent, sagging as if under immense weight. Its voice rumbled, someone must be the ward's anchor. Someone must feed it. She has fed it long enough. Her mouth went dry. You want me to take her place? The shadow tilted its head. Not want. Need. Her mother's burned grip tightened. Please, the voice cracked, ragged with pain. Please, Claire. Let me go. The room warped again, flickering between the boiler room and the ward from before, rows of beds, patients staring at her, whispering in time with her heartbeat. Stay with us, stay with us. She felt herself weakening, not in strength but in will. The memories that had been buried all these years bubbled up, sharp and acidic. Her mother's breakdown. The endless days in the sanatorium. The moment she had been asked, in soft, clinical tones, if she wanted to leave with her mother, or stay. And she had stayed. The shadow moved closer, towering over her now. The air thickened until every breath felt like swallowing hot sand.
Colby is gonna come back. Maybe that'll be. Colby's gonna come back right here and pick up you guys in a few minutes. So, like and subscribe.
Choose, it said simply. Clara's mind reeled. The thought of the furnace, of endless heat, of hands clawing in the dark, was unbearable. But so was the thought of walking away and knowing her mother would be left in that place forever. Her eyes met the black void of the shadow's face. If I take her place, she leaves? She's free? The thing nodded, a slow, deliberate motion. The ward always keeps its promise. Her mother's eyes, what little was left of them, glistened faintly. I can't do it anymore, Clara. I can't burn anymore. Her pulse roared in her ears. She could almost see herself outside again, breathing cold air, walking away from Hollowhurst, never looking back. But in that image her mother's place was simply taken by another face. Another voice calling for help in the dark. She had been that voice once. She swallowed hard. Let her go, she said finally. I'll stay. The shadow's long fingers reached forward, brushing her forehead. The touch was ice and fire all at once, a crackling pulse that sank into her skull. The heat from the furnace surged, and she was yanked forward into the pit. The fire swallowed her whole. It was not just heat, it was sensation in every nerve, raw and relentless. Faces pressed against her from every side, mouths against her skin, whispering fragments of memory. A child's sob, a nurse's laugh, the slam of a ward door. Every pain she had ever known, and many she hadn't, folded into her. Her scream vanished into the roar. Somewhere above she felt her mother's grip loosen. The hands withdrew. And then, the weight lifted. The fire seemed to pull back, leaving her in a vast, silent dark. When she opened her eyes she was lying in one of the east wing beds. The ward was quiet. The light was dim but steady. Across from her the other beds were full, all of them watching her, patient, still. Their eyes were the only moving things. The shadow stood at the far end, head bent as always. You will feed the ward, it said. You will keep them quiet. She tried to speak, but her voice was gone. Her hands were burned black to the wrist. Far away, impossibly far now, she heard her mother's voice. Not from the furnace, but carried faintly on the wind through an open door somewhere. Laughing. Breathing fresh air. Clara turned her head toward the sound, but the door was already swinging shut. Time dissolved. Days passed, or hours or years, without meaning. Patients came and went, though the beds were never empty. Sometimes she felt herself rising from the bed, moving through the ward with hands that did not feel like hers, tucking in blankets, pressing cold cups to cracked lips. Other times she was only a watcher, eyes fixed on the door.
One of the scariest things I've ever done, guys. I'm not supposed to be having a light right now. I guess I'm slightly cheating, but I'm by myself in the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. What the hell is that noise? What the fuck is that? No fucking way. No fucking way that's going on right now. Guys, there's no fucking way. Holy shit. I have chills all over my fucking body. Is there somebody standing right there? Holy shit! Guys, what the fuck? Actually, what in the fuck is going on? Holy shit, dude, I'm freaking out actually. What the fuck? I've never seen it go this fucking crazy before.
Waiting for the next to come. One night, or what she thought was night, the ward lights flickered. The door creaked open and footsteps echoed down the hall. A woman stepped in holding a torch, her coat damp from the cold. She looked around, hesitant. Her eyes landed on Clara's bed. For a long moment they just stared at each other. Then Clara smiled, a slow, deliberate thing. Midnight, she whispered, though no sound should have carried that far. East wing. The woman flinched and stepped back toward the door. Clara sat up. Her hands, blackened, split, gripped the bed frame until it creaked. The other patients began to whisper in unison. Stay with us, stay with us. The shadow in the corner straightened to its full, terrible height. The door slammed shut. Epilogue. Weeks later, a letter arrived at a small flat in London. Yellowed paper. Dark ink. We require your presence at Hollowhurst Sanatorium. The new arrival's torch beam quivered across the peeling walls, cutting thin lines through the gloom. Clara watched from her bed, her body still as stone, though every nerve strained toward the sound of those hesitant footsteps. The others in the ward stirred faintly, their movements subtle but synchronous, the way leaves ripple when a wind passes through a forest. She could feel the shadow in the far corner straighten, its presence like a shift in air pressure. This was no ordinary visitor. The ward seemed to know it. The woman, young, maybe early 20s, moved slowly, peering into each bed as if expecting to find someone she recognized. Her coat dripped steadily onto the cracked tiles, each drop loud in the silence. She didn't see Clara yet. The whisper began, low and breathy. Stay with us, stay with us. The woman's head jerked toward the sound. Who's there? She called, her voice carrying the brittle edge of someone forcing themselves to sound braver than they felt. Clara pushed herself upright. The movement felt strange, not like muscles pulling but like something inside her being lifted by unseen strings. Her blackened fingers curled around the bed frame. You came, Clara said, though she had no memory of choosing to speak. The voice that came out was hers, but older, somehow rusted with disuse. The woman startled, swinging the torch toward her. The beam caught Clara's face and for a moment the young woman's expression flickered. Recognition? No, more like confusion, as though something in Clara's face was familiar without being known. Are you the one who sent me the letter? She asked. Clara tilted her head. She could feel the ward's attention narrowing, pressing on the back of her skull. I sent what needed to be sent, she replied.
Is there somebody right here? Could you kick this ball for me? Are you making my device go off right now? Timmy, if this is you, can you please kick this ball for me? Let's play a game. No fucking way. Guys, holy fuck. I'm gonna bring this back. I'm gonna bring this back to Sam. I don't know what to do. I have never, swear on my life, I have never, ever, ever seen it go that crazy. It's never gone that loud. It's like something was standing right here. I'm by myself now. If there's anything here, now would be your chance to let me know. This is so fucked. The ball didn't move, these balls didn't move. I'm shaking, I'm gonna bring this back. Also, by the way, walking down here, guys, to grab the camera was probably one of the scariest things ever because I didn't have any sort of lights whatsoever. This is so messed up. Sam said he was seeing shadows.
The shadow moved then, gliding along the wall without disturbing the air. Its voice, low and resonant, filled the space. Inventory must be maintained. The woman flinched. What was that? Clara's gaze didn't leave the newcomer. She could feel the wards were moving through her, the way water moves through a channel carved by time. It means you've been chosen. Chosen for what? To stay. The woman's laugh was short, high, brittle. No, I'm just looking. I have questions about someone who, she broke off, glancing around the ward again. My grandmother. She used to work here, I think. Clara felt something stir deep in her memory, a flicker of a nurse's white uniform, hair pinned in a bun. A sharp face, eyes like frost. Sister Whitcomb. The name surfaced like a bubble through deep water. Yes. The woman in front of her had that same sharpness around the eyes, though softened by youth. She was here, Clara said. She left. But not entirely. The woman frowned. What does that mean? It means you're her echo. And echoes always return. The lights overhead flickered, the yellowed bulbs buzzing angrily. The other patients began to move, sitting up in unison. Their faces remained blank, but their eyes, some milky, some sharp, all fixed on the newcomer. The shadow's voice came again. One must take the bed. The bed must be filled. The woman backed away now, her earlier bravado gone. You're insane. All of you. Clara rose from her bed. Her burned hands reached for the metal frame, and the air between them seemed to warp faintly. The ward had never told her how it had chosen her before, but she understood now. It was never about who wanted to stay. It was about who couldn't leave. You came looking for someone, Clara said softly, stepping toward her. That's the door you opened. The woman's torch flickered and died. In the sudden darkness, the whispering became deafening. The beds creaked as patients leaned forward in eerie synchronization. A sudden burst of light flooded the room, not from the bulbs, but from the furnace glow bleeding through the cracks in the floor. Heat rose, bringing with it the acrid stench of scorched cloth and skin. The shadow moved behind the woman now, impossibly fast, blotting out the furnace light for a moment. Its limbs extended, curling around her like branches. Choose, it said. She shook her head violently. No. I'm not staying. Clara stepped closer. Neither was I. The woman spun toward the door. It was open now, just enough for her to see the corridor beyond, clean, white-tiled, humming with fluorescent light. She made for it, boots slapping against the floor. The patients in the nearest beds leaned out, arms snapping forward to grab at her coat. She tore free, stumbling into the hall. Clara followed, but her steps didn't make a sound. In the corridor, the woman was running now, past rooms where shadows moved behind glass, past trolleys loaded with rusting instruments. Her breathing was ragged, panicked. She reached a set of double doors and shoved them open, only to find herself stepping into the East Wing ward again. She froze. Her eyes darted to Clara, who was already standing in the center of the room, as if she had never left. The Shadow's voice came once more, now right behind the woman. The ward turns until the bed is full. The woman dropped the torch. It rolled across the floor, its beam catching the furnace glow seeping through the cracks again. The smell thickened. Clara could almost hear the hands beneath the floor, dragging across the underside like restless insects. She took another step toward the woman. If you go, she'll take your place. The woman's brow furrowed. Who? Clara's mouth curved into something like a smile. Your grandmother. She's still here. Waiting. The Shadow extended one long finger toward Clara. Anchor, it said, the word vibrating in her bones. Then to the woman, air. The furnace doors banged open somewhere below. Heat surged upward, curling around them. The whispering reached a fever pitch, words tumbling over one another until they were no longer words at all. Clara reached out one hand. It's not a choice you make, she said quietly. It's the one you can't escape. The woman's face twisted, anger, fear, something else flickering beneath. For a heartbeat, Clara thought she might see acceptance. But then the woman's gaze snapped to the open door at the far end of the ward. She bolted for it. The Shadow moved. It was over in seconds. The long limbs swept forward, wrapping the woman mid-run. She screamed, kicking, but the air around her seemed to congeal, slowing every movement. The Shadow lifted her effortlessly, carrying her toward the furnace glow. Clara followed at a distance, her own steps drawn forward by the ward's will. The floor split open ahead, revealing a chasm of fire and writhing figures. The heat was a wall, blistering skin on contact. The Shadow lowered the woman toward it. Her eyes found Clara's in those last moments. Please, she gasped. Please help me. Clara's throat tightened. For a moment she felt the weight of the choice again. Hers, her mother's, every soul before them. But the ward's voice filled her mind, drowning out everything else. Inventory complete. The woman vanished into the fire. The floor sealed itself with a low groan. The heat faded, replaced by the still, stale air of the ward. Clara stood alone now, the bed silent, the patients lying back down in perfect unison. The Shadow receded to its corner, folding itself into the darkness. She turned and walked to her bed, sitting on the edge. Her blackened hands rested in her lap. Hours, or years, later the ward doors creaked open. A draft swept through, carrying with it the smell of rain. Somewhere outside the world continued, unknowing. Clara closed her eyes. Somewhere far away in a small flat, an envelope was being slid under a door. Yellowed paper. Dark ink.